Welcome to Maximizing Your Career. With us today, we have our session chair, Bernard Weiser from EIPMA, which stands for a really long acronym that I'll let him talk about. Anyhow, I'm going to introduce him, and then he's going to come up and introduce all of the chairs in his session. So Bernard Weiser, as I mentioned, is the president of EIPMA, which is Entertainment Industry Professionals Mentoring Alliance. There, I got it. He is an award-winning supervising sound editor with 35 years of experience. He has also worked as a dialogue editor and sound effects editor and teaches sound design for the graduate program at UCLA. His impressive credits include Bad Times, The El Royale, and American Hustle, among others. So he is also Vice President of the Motion Picture Sound Editors, MPSE, and President of the Entertainment Industry Professionals Mentoring Alliance, as we mentioned. So please help me welcome Bernard to the stage. Yes, big applause. And that way.
Well, good morning, everybody. Just to be a little more personal, if you want to move over a little closer, since when we do get to the panel over here, it'll be easier. You'll hear a little bit better, I think, and that'll be really nice. Now, Shany Mahalu is going to give a presentation for the first 45 minutes, and then we'll bring up the panel and we'll have our Q&A discussion. Don't have your bio. Shany's from Pepperdine University, and I want to bring you up, and if you'd introduce yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with all of you today. My name is Shany Mahalu. I work for Pepperdine University. I'm the Director of Recruitment for the part-time MBA at Pepperdine Graziadio Business School. And by my accent, I'm sure you can all hear that I'm not originally from the US. So I want to start with a short introduction of who I am, where I came from, my unique career journey, because I think there are many learnings that I learned through the way. I said to one of you as we walked here that I wasn't planning necessarily to end up in LA, in California, to lead presentations like this one, to be passionate about people and helping them. But some things and opportunities in my way that I said yes to open up this kind of journey and opportunities, and here I am today. So here's my personal story. I was born in Israel, in the south of Israel. This is Tel Aviv. I wish I was born there. I was born in Lehavim, a small town by Beersheba. I served in the Israeli army, went through the Israeli Scout, and a year after I finished my service, an opportunity came my way to transfer from Tel Aviv University to the American Jewish University here in LA. It was pretty big for me. I knew English somewhat okay, not in an academic level. And I said yes to the opportunity. I had a lot of pressure from my boyfriend then, my husband today, to just go for it, and I did. I also at the time was working as Director of Security for the Israeli Airlines, believe it or not, here in LAX. So the combination of going to school and pursuing a BA in business and being the director of such an intense operation, a complex operation, made me start thinking about what I'm learning in school and how do I apply it at work. And I got really passionate about helping people, helping organizations improve effectiveness, revisiting how do we do the things that we do. I had a big aha moment and realized that I wanted to further my education and learn more about organization development. And I tried with my supervisors, I tried at work, I tried with my colleagues, really to see how can I implement some of the new learnings, but the organization was very mechanistic and rigid and not really willing to implement those new learning. So I decided to go to graduate school. Maybe if I learn more, advance my learning, my knowledge, my wisdom, learn new technologies and methodologies, I will be able to come back to the airline and implement some of those new learnings. That did not work either. They were very strict on the way they wanted to do a few things, so I resigned. I resigned the airline, with the beautiful bridge behind me and moved to a job at American Apparel. It was really interesting. I was a consultant working on a cross-cultural work between the American side and the Israeli one. But not long after, I received a phone call from Pepperdine University asking me to come and consider interviewing for a job as a career coach working with a full-time MBA. It was something I'd never done before, was never in my horizon, definitely not to work for a university. But I said, yes, I'll come and interview. I want to meet with the team. I want to meet with all of you. And again, as you can hear, I continue to say yes to opportunities, although I did not necessarily have the skills or the knowledge or the confidence to go there and get the job. Few things that happened at Pepperdine is that the moment I stepped into that office, the people that I met with, and they made me go through maybe 5 or 6 rounds, they were all great. I became friends with them instantly. And that kind of data I invite you to look at as you go through your career job and search. Because those connections that I made with them instantly, first I still am friends with many of them that are still employed at Pepperdine, but even those that left, we recognized that the moment where we met for the first time and the meaning and connectivity that we created back then. So I got the job, and long story short, I've been with Pepperdine for 10 years now. I started as a career counselor, working one-on-one with individuals and helping untangle some of those conversations they have internally with themselves. Am I good enough? Is this job the right one for me? Do I do it for myself or for my parents, my peers, other people that want me to step into those different roles in marketing, brand marketing, many in the entertainment industry actually, but also in finance, merger and acquisition, sports and entertainment, and so forth. In the years that came, I became a manager of people and a leader of a very big team and faculty, and I continue to be helpful. That's my passion that I realize and something that is very important to me. Before I move into, there's one last picture that is the most important one of my kids. So before I move to the actual presentation, I had a photo of my 3 boys. So I'm married, I have 3 boys, my team at home, and I decided to bring it up here today because of the role of women in career and managing the different priorities, and men as well. If you have kids, you have other responsibilities outside of work. So this is a big conversation today in career development. How can women continue and advance their career? How do you find flexible jobs? And if you're in a hiring position, think about those women and give them the opportunity, because they produce quite a lot with what they have back home as well. Some of the desired outcome for this presentation is to explore some concepts and methodologies, specifically from the field of organization development. I come from the academia, so I do a lot of research and read a lot. So I'll share some of those briefly with you. It won't be a lecture. Apply best practices of career strategies, how to go about looking for your next opportunity, what to do, what not to do. I'll show you an action plan that you can actually create once you gain clarity about what is it that you want to do, that can help you get more from the things that you're already doing. So my belief and my foundation, and I'll speak about that in a minute, is really the clarity and the sense of self that you have to gain before you can get any opportunity that you want. So it's not really about can you do the job or not, or your resume or the cover letter, or meeting with an ex-person. It's more about how you apply yourself in all those conversations, and how and what you bring to the table day in and day out. So we'll talk about that as well. And the last bullet point is to discuss how to bring your chair to the table. And instead of waiting for the invitation, I'll talk about how to create the invitation for yourself. So I'll start with the last book that I read, Michelle Obama, Becoming, which was really incredible and inspiring for me. But what I took away, and is very related to this presentation, is career search. And working with hundreds of individuals, I learned that individuals are thinking that in order to move up in my career, I need to go from point A to point B, as if it was a vertical line, a straight line, if I had to climb a ladder. But as you go through your career, you will find out that it's a journey, and it can get you and take you many places. Some of them you didn't even plan or think are possible. For me, as you saw, from the south of Israel to Tel Aviv to Los Angeles to many different industries across the security, airline, transformation to transportation to the fashion industry and back to higher education. And I'm here today to tell you the truth, also because I said yes to an invitation that came to me completely unexpected from a person that I met through a friend at Netflix who invited me to a women luncheon I spoke at, and then they asked me to come here. Michelle Obama in the book is speaking specifically about a question that we often ask our kids, and I'm sure each and every one of us was asked early, or maybe still people ask you that question. What do you want to do or be when you grow up? And she explained that the question is the wrong question, because career and your life is not something that has a finite point that you need to get to. And it's something that is evolving, and you can continue to reinvent yourself as you go through it. And there's nowhere to get, and it's perfect where you are right now. So that's very important to remember that. The foundation of my career coaching is a concept called the self as an instrument, and I will spend a few minutes right now talking to you a little bit about that. Specifically, managing the self as an instrument is a concept that was invented in the field of organization development with a relationship between the consultant and the client. So when I come to a consulting engagement, how can I help the client is by knowing myself as the best tool that I have in my toolkit, as if I don't have anything else, but I have myself, my education, my learning, my life experience, how I relate to other people, and also what do I tell myself internally in terms of, even at this very moment, do I think that I'm the right presenter for this session? Do I know everything? Am I well prepared? Can I add some value to each and every one of you? So self and instrument is a concept that look at the individual as the only tool in the toolkit. And if that's all you have in your career development, the work is really to look internally and to work on increase your self-awareness, speak with people, ask questions, reflect, meditate, and find more information about yourself and improve yourself. So when you go and meet with different people in networking, in small group sessions, in interviewing, in moving to the last interview process, really being able to master that, build connections, and move forward in your career. Something else to say about the self as an instrument, if you go about your life being just okay with the results that you're getting, you probably don't need to use yourself so much. You go to work every day, you get the result that you get, you try your best to tackle the challenges that are coming your way, and tomorrow will come as well, and that's okay. But if you want to get different results than the result that you're getting right now in terms of your career, your compensation, the work that you do, the access that you have, an intervention is needed. And the recommendation is to do something different. And that is to start looking at yourself and asking questions that will lead to a higher sense of clarity, higher sense of self, and a better understanding of who I am and how I go about my life. Now, I'm assuming that all of you have jobs already. So many times we're looking for opportunities outside what we're doing currently. But if you start using yourself currently at your work and showing up fully, being present, seek visibility in meetings, in conversations, the way you dress up, the way you talk about your work, the quality of the work, the speed of your response, the way you communicate over email, and I can show techniques to do that as well, the results that you will gain are completely different. Another tool to raise your awareness is the Johari window. And the Johari window is kind of ourselves with 4 different aspects. The first one is what is known to ourselves and known to other people. So things that you're sharing with other people about yourself, your job, your family, where you're from, what you ate for breakfast, your allergies maybe. And then there's the hidden selves, things that you know about yourself but you're not sharing with other people, more private things about yourself. There are other 2 aspects. One of them is blind spots, things that other people know about you that you don't have access to. This is a very interesting area to look at. Thinking, okay, with inquiry and feedback and seeking that constructive feedback, I can close that window of my blind spot and open more widely what is known to me and known to other people. So in developing yourself as the instrument, and again, I want to go back, think about yourself as a guitar or a violin or a piano. If you want to perform very, very highly, you want to start playing with that tool, right? You want to practice, you want to prepare. It takes a lot of practice to play the piano and to get to a level where you master that. So the work in career development, and when they asked me to present on how to maximize your career development, I immediately thought about the self as an instrument, because the more work you do on yourself, the more value you'll get from what show up in your reality, basically. Now, the work in the Johari window is to widen those boxes that are known to yourself and to other people. And you do that, and I'll show you in a minute, through inquiry, conversations, feedback, some reflection, inquiry again, more reflection, and insight will come up, and a new vision will emerge for yourself and other people. So the self as an instrument is a tool, and it's the only tool that individuals have to bring about change in themselves, their actions, behavior, dialogue, question, and choices. Self as an instrument is who we are, always goes with us into each of our roles and situations. So we pay so much attention, and I interview many people. They pay attention to the resume, they pay attention to the cover letter, they get too concerned about the specifics of the job. Will I have to work evenings and Saturdays and this and that? But they miss the eye contact, the connection, they miss telling the real story, they miss being fully present in the room. And lastly here is our collective knowledge, thoughts, feelings, experiences, and vulnerabilities inform all that we do. So you want to pay attention to all of those. And you bring your entire self to work. So there is another book that I read, Richard Glazer, in his new book, Elevate, speaks specifically about the whole self and about the spiritual, intellectual, emotional, and physical state of self. And the work as well is the integration in all of the 4. You want to create some sort of balance. You don't want just to exercise and run a marathon and forget about your emotional state and your intellectual space. So you want to invest in all of those and come to work fully integrated individual. And there is a lot of work today, even with kids, about mindfulness and conscious discipline, and how do you raise your mindfulness so that when you show up to situations and conversations, you're fully integrated. And people see that today, and people invest so much work into getting to that state that when you're not there, it's hard to compete and to keep up. So think about the job market today. I think it's the lowest unemployment rate in years, probably lowest than 3%. So most of the people that are hired, they're employed. So you should receive a phone call from a potential employer that is recruiting you and trying to, pull you into another opportunity. So being prepared, looking at myself, and doing the work in terms of my spiritual, who is it that I want to be in the world? Answer those kind of questions and gaining clarity, even if they will never ask you that question in an interview. My intellectual, thinking more about how do I think, how do I learn best? what do I value as something in your spiritual space? You know, what kind of organization, culture would fit very well with my own values and perception of myself? The health, the well-being is another big one that without that you won't be able to manage through all the challenges at work. I want to talk briefly also about the future of work. So this is big. I'm sure, and I know because I read the program, conversations about AI is a big conversation in your industry, but it's also a big one in higher education and in many other industries. So how do we prepare as human beings to the future of work? And as I speak with you about the self as an instrument and elevating yourself and being in a state that you're fully integrated, because in 2020, emotional intelligence will continue to be the number 7 skill you have to have in order to compete in the market. So being more intuitive, communicate better with other people, it's something that machine won't be able to do as well as individuals. So paying attention to that. The Future of Jobs Report 2018, they listed EQ as the 7th skill, the top 10 skill in 2020. Research also shows that more than 50% of leaders don't know how to communicate or don't communicate at the level. So again, in order to compete in whatever function or industry you're seeking opportunities at, you want to be able to continue and develop that aspect of yourself. So going back to some of the actions that I can talk about here, how to maximize your career. So clarity, as I said, is the foundation or at the heart of finding your next opportunity. And it starts with inquiry, really. And by inquiry, I mean many questions that you can ask yourself. And I think I have the questions here. Different reflection questions that you can ask yourself. You can ask those questions daily as part of your meditation or whatever practices you have. You can journal about the answers to those specific questions. What do you enjoy most about your work? What do you want to be good at? What kind of leader you want to work with? What are your values? What organization you don't want to work for, or what cause you want to stay away from? I think knowing what I don't want to do is as important as knowing what I do want to do. Going back to the process, it starts with an inquiry. So the questions are way more important than anything else. So really find a partner or a colleague or a friend to ask those questions with, and you can ask them with yourself. And having many conversations. A conversation can lead to those aha moments. So for me, it was with a faculty at my undergrad that helped me think about graduate school and help ask those kind of questions. I call those people angels in our journey that are really committed. And I was one as a coach to other people. So finding a mentor at work or a friend that can be that for you. Reflection through journaling, and don't underestimate. I just attended also a presentation with the CEO that shared about a room full of journals from his entire career of 40 years with decisions that he made and the thought process behind it and things that he had to deal with to move through the motion of being so high up as a senior CEO, right? So do that and practice that, and you'll see that you have insight into things that you cannot see right now. The insight will lead to the vision and the action. And very important, and I spoke about it at the Women Luncheon, is saying no to things. So not every opportunity, because they will keep coming, and the more insight and the more work you do on yourself, the more opportunities you will generate. But some of them will be completely unrelated, and if you pay attention to your body, and it happens to me when I'm in tune with myself, you know exactly that this is not one that you want to pursue. So you want to stay away from those opportunities that are not the right one for you, but don't do it because you're afraid or there's fear to maybe. Just listen to, is this something that I feel excited about? And ask good questions and go and meet the people, and hopefully the data will provide you with the answer. So here is a really good quote by Peter Block. a big name in the field of organization development. Good questions work on us. We don't work on them. They are not a project to be completed by but a doorway opening onto greater depth of understanding, actions that will take us into being more fully alive. So really spending time with the questions more than the answers. It's very important. So here are some of the questions. Some others that I didn't touch on and maybe are not even listed here. What is important to me in terms of life-work balance? How do I prioritize? For some people is the flexibility, for other people is the travel component, and identifying the more specific you can be, the things that are important to you in answering those questions. So let's take a few minutes just to hear from you. Anyone is willing to provide some feedback about what struck you so far in what I'm sharing, how am I doing, what are you hearing, what do you think? It can be one word, it can be a full sentence. Anyone? Yes, thank you.
Be in tune with yourself.
Okay, good. Be in tune with yourself. Yes. Yes.
For me, it's how other people see your abilities and your future that you might not see in yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, how other people see your future, the one that you cannot see for yourself. Thank you. Yes.
It seems like some great general wisdom over there to think about. It always interests me that this industry in particular is changing so fast. It seems like what is in demand one year is obsolete the next year, regardless of whether that's a job or a piece of equipment or a person. And it's interesting that some people will see obsolescence and others will see opportunity. So I don't know if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I can definitely. Thank you for that. So how to look at challenges or the speed of change as an opportunity, while other people might not do that, and take advantage of that and compete in a way that you can leverage on those challenges while other people are still trying to keep up, right? It's a very good question, and I will. Anything else? Yes.
Reaffirming the importance of emotional intelligence business.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the emotional intelligence aspect. And in change, and to your question as well, utilizing the self, right, again, and there's rapid change coming. I mean, it's too late to try to even stop that. It's coming in every industry, and being agile and being able to adapt quickly to new situations. I'm a director of recruitment, and in the last year I had 3 reorganizations. So I have to move people and let them know that no, you're not recruiting for the executive program today, you're moving to the part-time or the full-time, and we need you to. And I see their faces, they cannot catch up their breath, like, don't do that to me again, and I'm sorry, you know, we just need to do that. So you want to be able, and the people that we keep and that we're able to move forward and advance are the ones that are just say yes to any opportunity, and they go with the flow and they smile and they're like, okay, let's go, what else can I be doing? So thank you. Love hearing from all of you, and I also like being here more than on the stage. So this is a map that I think is a really good one if you want to take a picture, and I think my presentation will be available online. But if you want to start somewhere, and you want to start with the questions, you're not starting with a map. I want to make this very clear. Start with those questions, write them down, write the answer to those. And if we had more time today, I would have you pair with someone and have them ask a question to you. But maybe throughout the conference, find someone to ask those questions and have them listen to the way you answer those. Because when you hear yourself responding to a question, it's not the same as when you secretly answer your own question on a piece of paper. So be courageous and practice that, and do it more and more with your spouse, with your girlfriend, with your neighbor, with a friend. And once you go through the motions of the inquiry and conversation and the insight that you gain, and you have some sort of a vision, go then to the map. And you want to start right here to your right with the question, what is the dream career for you? What is the desired career for you? What would be something that if everything else was possible and you had all the skills, all the education, all the years of experience, the confidence, the language, the technical one and the actual one, you would be able to pursue. And you want to say that, describe it freely, provide details to the map. And then the big why, which I think for me is the most important one, because once you are clear into why you want that type of career, there is no way that the motion of the universe and just the motion of life won't take you there. But the authenticity, and that's the key of going through this exercise, is to be true to yourself and be true in conversations with other people and go for it and be real for yourself. So you want to describe the values that you have, 5 ones that are non-negotiable. I teach a class at Pepperdine, a cross-cultural class, and when I ask graduate students, they're pretty smart, to come up with 5 values, they have to Google values. And one of them came up with a list of 50 values, and he started looking, and I was like, wow, you know. So how disconnected we are, and it's not just the student, I'm included, from ourselves, that when we ask, what are the most 5 important values to you? I have to go and Google values and start reflecting on the ones that are very important to me. So thankfully I'm Jewish and I have my faith that reminds me some of my values, but I don't know if I can come very easily with 5. So think for yourself about that as well. Your strength, and then once you finish the right side, you want to move to the left one. And over here, it's more of the execution, the strategy. How will you go about that? And reflection of the people that you know, because you cannot find another job without your network, and I'll talk about it. Your network, your role models, ideas for your professional selves, ideal clients and company. I'm running out of time, so I'll go quickly over that one, but maximizing your career optionality. So the more skills you gain within your organization, the higher the value that you bring and the more options you'll have in your career. So I'll say it again. Being with one industry and continue working is very important, because the more skill you're gaining, the more options you will have. And counting on the potential that you have is not enough. It happens sometimes, right? I was hired for my potential at Pepperdine University, but I think I had a lot of luck, and I used myself in connecting with a group of people who interviewed me, and it happened. But I think if I had more skills and I came to the table with 10 years of career coaching, the process was easier, and it was not as much as a luck as it was in my case. So to sum that, the more value you can drive from an organization, the more optionality you will have in your career. So don't run away from an organization. Run to a new job opportunity that you have, and continue to invest in what you're doing right now, because it will help you gain better skills for yourself. This is probably the most important thing, and maybe the one that you came here for today, is building connections, building relationship. The power of your connections is the essence of the work in career development. Don't underestimate the value of your network, and specifically identify individuals in your network through LinkedIn, through different events that you're attending, professional associations and conferences like this one that you're here today, and how through conversations you can generate more opportunities for yourself, and use every conversation with each individual as an opportunity to get to at least 2 more individuals or another opportunity that you can get. Something else that is very important here is building relationships outside and inside your organization, and specifically through mentorship. So if you don't have one, find one If you're not mentoring a person and you're in a position to do that, please do that as well. I think the working with another person, and specifically the questions that I mentioned, a mentor can be very helpful in discovering those responses that you have to the different questions, and finding also a sponsor inside your organization. So if you don't have one, you must have one. And as I said earlier, you might be looking for opportunities right now outside your organization, but not underestimate the opportunities that are available for you inside. You just need to start showing up differently to work so people can notice you and offer you those different opportunities. And you do that again through increasing your self-awareness and being more in tune with yourself, but also through building relationship with people. And you do that by asking them the questions that I suggested or other questions. I cannot tell you how many people reach out to me and they ask advice or they want to connect or go to lunch. And I sometimes sit through lunches, listen with all my heart, being very into it, but they never ask me how am I doing in my job, and what am I working on, and how are my kids doing, and what some of the challenges in my industry. And sometimes I'm having a really tough day and I wish they would ask me that question over lunch, right? Because it may be the third lunch that I'm having that week. But it's more about other people, and some of them are just masters of doing that. They're coming with the best ideas and the best solutions and the nicest questions. And we form connections and friendships, and the willingness and the readiness to support them is just flowing. And the ideas that I have are even better just because of how the conversation is going. So don't just go into those different conversations with the intention to get something for yourself. Make sure you help the other person. They're also on their own career journeys. Even if they're very senior, they're probably struggling with something. So that's something else to pay attention to. And we rise by lifting others. I love this quote, right? So if you're not a mentor, be a mentor. If you don't have one, find one. Do it together. I think it's very, very important. And reach out to me. I'm happy to support anyone. Find individuals on LinkedIn to connect with, to ask a question. Brené Brown, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, and I think there is someone from Netflix here on the panel. Yay. I didn't know that, but I love Netflix and also the show. So Brené Brown is a big researcher and a public speaker, one of the biggest individual on TED Talk. And she's speaking a lot about shame and about courage and vulnerability. And as I was preparing to this conversation, and I'm sure you weren't expecting that I will speak so much about yourself and what do you bring to the table, I was thinking about Brené Brown, and she wrote many books, and I invite you to go online and look at some of the books. Some of them are about being you, be all in, fall, learn, get up, and do it again. It's about the courage, it's about the conversation, it's about showing up fully to situations and to your career.
I think we're going to have some fun, talk about some hard stuff, laugh a little bit, and hopefully learn something from each other. How many of you know that I'm super introverted? It's handy when I'm traveling because I'll be sitting next to someone and they'll say, so what do you do? And if I'm not in the mood to chat, I'll be like, I study shame, what do you do? They're just like, nah. How many of you want more love, intimacy, joy? True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. You don't measure vulnerability by the amount of disclosure. Live tweeting your bikini wax, not vulnerability. I'm not gonna bullshit you. Vulnerability is hard, and it's scary, and it feels dangerous. But it's not as hard, scary, or dangerous as getting to the end of our lives and having to ask ourselves, what if I would have shown up?
So Brené Brown, go to her website. She speaks a lot about shame, about courage, about vulnerability in conversations, about vulnerability not being just posting on Facebook or wherever you post, Instagram, something very revealing about yourself, but it's being in tune with yourself. It's asking the right questions, and it's sharing your emotions, and you're learning with another person. So it's all about connecting, something that in the future of work, the machines won't be able to replace that for us. So we need to elevate the way we can connect with other people, and that's the real work, and that's what people are hiring for. They hire people that they will enjoy seeing in the office every day, people that they can connect with, people that are passionate, that they know what they want, not just any job, just get me a job, right? They did some work to get to the clarity so they can say, yes, exactly, this is what I want to do, and this is why I want to do that. My key takeaways, I have 1 minute for those. Invest in yourself through education, through reading, through attending events like this one, through mentorship, joining a mentorship program. Do things that will elevate the level of self that you have. People will ask you in interviews, what book did you read last? What movie did you go to? What is the best conversation you've been in? So know those things, and education is a powerful one. I have to give a shout out to my school. Create the spaces you wish you would have been invited to. Don't wait for the invitation. Create that. Start a book club. Start a mentorship program internally at work. I serve on an advisory council. I serve on different boards. If I want to be the executive director that I'm not at work, I will go and find another space for myself to do that. Or I'll look for another job, right? But you don't want to wait for those invitations, and you want to start showing up like one in the way you dress, your talk, the things that you're doing. Visibility is key. Other people pay attention to you, and recently a client told me that a friend at work got a job over someone else because the someone else is never sharing ideas during meetings. She's very timid and quiet. So you don't want to talk too much. You want to allow other people to speak as well, but you want to share yourself with other people at work. And key executives, they pay attention to that, and then they start thinking about how can we utilize, and I'm in very many conversations like that the dean started paying attention to an individual, and he's asking to advance them into another role. So it's key. Avoid making decisions based on external affirmation. Michelle Obama is speaking about that in her book, Becoming, right? Don't pay too much attention to what other people think you should be doing. It is your future, not their future. And it's not a competition. Each one of us is on a different journey. Don't be afraid to take a detour, as we spoke about earlier, and change your course completely. Try to not compare yourself with other people. There's a saying in Judaism, if we all put our problems in the center of the room, I promise you that each one of us will take his problems back. So don't compare yourself with other people. We're all dealing with our own journeys. Embrace the unknown and be agile, flexible, open. Learn how to deal with uncertainty, because it's coming big time. Ask for help, and asking for help is very hard, but that's the only way to go about that. Don't try to go about your career search by yourself. I spoke at the women luncheon about sorry, not sorry. That was my presentation. And I recommended a Google plugin that you can download today for free. The name of it is Just Not Sorry. So if you Google Just Not Sorry, Google plugin, it will be a new tool on your Google. And just like you have the red underline when you have a grammar spelling error and it fixes it for you, now it will highlight every time you are apologetic in your emails. When you use just or I'm sorry and I had to, and you tell all those stories, it's amazing. I can tell you that when I see those yellow underlines, sometimes I'm like, what did I say that it is telling me to change here? But then when I look again, there's another way to be more assertive in the way we communicate. So download that. And lastly, and then I'll let the panel come up, when one grows, we all grow. So just think about that. We're in it together, and thank you very much for having me today. And please reach out. I'll leave my cards or on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
All right. It's interesting. I love the quote, Shany, that you have there of we rise by lifting others. And certainly EIPMA EIPMA is the Entertainment Industry Professionals Mentoring Alliance. And this is something that we're all gathered together, and exactly what we're trying to do is to help new talent find their way entering the industry. EIPMA is focused mostly on students and pre-industry individuals. However, this can apply to people who are starting their career because it's quite daunting. Even here, those of you who are new to the industry might be a little overwhelmed by it all, and approaching people, veterans who you might even recognize. How do you get started and where do I go? It is overwhelming. So the programs that EIPMA has is helping to bridge that gap between the students and aspiring individuals looking to enter into a career in the entertainment industry. And certainly entertainment industry is an interesting thing, especially SMPTE members focusing on engineering. It's so vital what engineering brings. It allows the tools and the whole process to work in entertainment. Most of entertainment is about telling a story, and that's that creative side. But we need a lot of tools, especially as technology grows, to be able to tell those stories. And we like to look at ourselves at a lot of craft organizations who are men and women behind the curtain, people that you don't see. The public don't know half the things we do. Yet these are all necessary to bring a product to market, and the films that we see, the broadcast shows, Netflix and Amazon, and what they are bringing for our entertainment. So hopefully we can give some insight, and that's what EIPMA is about, through mentoring to help guide this talent. The talent portion, of course, is on you, and as you hone your skills, hopefully you rise up and start to get those jobs. We have an information booth outside. Please take a look, grab a program. You'll see what EIPMA is about. And our website is eipma.org. That's EIPMA.org. I know it can be challenging and overwhelming. It seems everyone in entertainment has their own story on how they got started. And indeed, we're going to hear 4 of those stories by our panelists, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. So this morning, we hope that you gain some insight and some advice on how you can progress and maximize your career. Do we have any students in the audience? Okay, so those of you who are here are already working, or you're looking for that job? Get an idea of your background at all? No, okay. So hopefully you'll get some insight from our panelists, and let me introduce them now. So first, if you want to come up, and as you're coming up, I can read Kylie Pena. It's our first panelist. Kylie is a post-production expert with dozens of major career credits on television and feature films. As part of Netflix Creative Technologies and Infrastructure team, Kylie is focused on best practices and innovations in motion imaging and sound. Kylie is also a SMPTE Hollywood section manager and has served on the annual conference programming committee for the past several years. Welcome, Kylie.
Thank you.
Jerry Palumbo. Jerry has been a broadcast audio mixer and specialist for the past 27 years in sports and entertainment. Prior to her work in broadcast, she spent years as a trained musician and arranger on the music side of the business before going into post-production and eventually live broadcast. With a current focus on live remote broadcast events, Jerry's work has included the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, NASCAR, Super Bowl, World Series, Stanley Cups, wow, that's a lot, the Oscars, and more. Entertainment shows have included The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, and American Idol, to name a few. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ron Eng. Ron is a supervising sound editor, designer, and re-recording mixer. Ron has always been knowledgeable of the latest technologies and is very much a mix tech in his own right. He has credits on Caroline, Jungle Book 2, Paranorman, and received a double Emmy nominations for his mix and design work on Twin Peaks.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Lastly, Angela Zapata. Angela is an HR professional with over 15 years experience, mostly working with the Creative Technology Group, a subdivision of NEP Group. She oversees employee relations, recruiting, and performance management at NEP. The NEP Group is an international production company that provides outsourced teleproduction services for major events throughout the world. Thanks for coming. So Kylie, I'm going to start with you
All right.
with some of our questions here. And as I mentioned, we all have our unique story on how we get started. So how did you get started? Why in the world would you go into entertainment?
That's a great question. And my mom and dad keep asking me that even to this day. I was always really into computers. The late 90s, we got our first computer. I was also a drama club nerd. And computers, video camera, theater friends all converged into telling stories with a visual medium. So I got to tinker a lot, try to keep things working, trying to figure out sync drift on firewire cables and things like that. Like, that was fun for me for some reason. Everyone was outside and I was inside all summer trying to figure out these issues. So I thought, this is probably a good thing to pursue for a career. So I went to school for it. And I wanted to become a video editor. And so I went to school, I did a lot of internships, but I had no career connections. I was in the middle of Indiana. I was from a really small town with a blinking stoplight. So not a lot of opportunities to go and meet people in broadcast. I moved to Indianapolis, which helped, but it was still very, very small. So I did the best I could, and I got connected into the industry through social media because that was becoming a thing. Now it's a little hit or miss, but in 2008 it was kind of cool. So that was how I got my connections, and I really learned and became visible. And then that led me down the rest of my career path.
Jerry, how about you?
Well, much like Kylie, I grew up in a very musical family of multi-instrumentalists, so I grew up with a lot of music. We had a lot of recorders growing up, the old Reveres and the tiny reel-to-reels, so I was always recording and messing around with it and didn't think much about it. But because of the multi-instrumentalists, I actually had a really strong background in music and music theory. My high school band director kind of pushed me in the direction of orchestration and composition, and that got me into a nice New York school. And from there, I was hired to do some orchestrations for an artist that was doing an indie project. And so I was really on the other side of the glass, on the creative side, and would sit with the engineers, and they had a Fairlight machine, which is dating me. This is the early Fairlight, and I'm like, how are you manipulating this data by moving a WAV file? So I just kind of have a technical aptitude, and I started hanging out with the engineers more. So I ended up on the engineering side, and that led to post-production, and then finally to live television. So it started on the music side in recording engineering, and then jumped, as all life does, you know, with the trajectories. It just, like she said earlier, I said yes to a lot of things that I wasn't sure about, and ended up in a different career.
Does some of these choices just appear as you were moving?
They did just appear. Some of them I would have never in a million years thought I'd be doing. You know, I never thought I'd be an engineer, but they made the actual arrangement sound 1,000 times better than the way we tracked it. You know, engineers are actually, they're magicians for what they do. We think about all these great musicians that are out there, but it's the engineers that really put the magic touch on everything that we hear, at least in the recording industry, and in front of house as well. I mean, what would you do without a front of house engineer, you know? So I just kind of fell into it. Everything I did I ended up falling into it.
A common thread.
Yes.
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 Ron?
Like her, I have a music background. Young kid, wanted to play guitar. My mom asked me if I wanted to play guitar, and I said, okay, yeah, great. I didn't have any desire, but once I got into it, I just fell in love with it, and that got me to Fuller State Music School. And I was trying to be a musician, moved out to LA originally in 1980, and did some some touring and tried to do some studio work, and was starving to death. So I moved back to Florida, where I'm from, and bass player, a friend of mine that I moved out to Los Angeles with, stayed here and called me 4 years later and said, "Hey, I got this great, industry, post-production sound," and I didn't even know what that was. I mean, I had literally didn't know they put sound to movies. I mean, I guess they did, but it didn't even occur to me. And I came out here on a whim, just like, okay, I'll try it. And I was 1989, 30 years later. As far as the technological side of things, I had a lot of interest in MIDI, computers, MIDI, so I did that as a musician. When I got into the business, the first guy to hire me said, "Hey, by the way, do you have any, computer experience?" And that was just at the kind of the bridge of film and computers and, digital technology taking over the business. And I said yes, and he stuck me on this thing called the waveframe, which is now not used that much anymore in our industry, but that kind of propelled me into the technological side of things, and I kind of worked my way up in the industry and started, editing, and assistant first, editing, supervisor, re-recording, mixer, and I'm here today.
By the way, knowing yourself is so important, and I've known Ron for a long time. He is a gentleman who can take the manual to a new program that comes out. He'll read it once and he knows that program inside out. So very handy. Again, knowing yourself. If you have that ability, you can make use of that. Sometimes saying yes to challenge yourself is really important. I know myself during that same period of time, I've educated myself to nonlinear editing when this was all just coming in and you had these new programs. And then when there was a job opportunity, I remember there was it was the Waveframe 1000, I think it was called, which was just this long list of numbers, and you had to figure it out, and you'd click on one. Basically it was a EDL, and you'd click on one to see the waveform. I had no idea how to work it, but there was a job opportunity to work at night. I'd be working alone. I said, perfect, I'll do it. Yeah, sure, I know this. And then I went and I just worked in the middle of the night all the way through and figured it out. So when technology is changing so fast, you don't want to cut yourself off. You want to learn. And that's the thing to drive for. Now, you have a different perspective on all this. Angela is HR. So your company perspective of everyone, engineers or creative types and editors coming in, looking for jobs, what do you see?
Well, being in HR, you're able to change industries. I was in manufacturing, I was in food manufacturing, and I was in logistics. And I always felt that it wasn't the right industry for me. When I ventured into the entertainment industry with creative technology, I found what I enjoyed. Their creativity, their ability to see something in a blueprint, and once they create it, it leaves you with your jaw open, like, wow, that was in his head. He envisioned this whole thing, and everybody behind it to be able to do it. Many times I find many engineers with these amazing ideas, and when they bring it to fruition, is their joy, their pride is all over their faces, and I just enjoy it very much.
Great. And what sort of obstacles let's continue with the next question, is what sort of obstacles do you see people going through when they're looking for work?
Well, one of the things that I do notice with the candidates is they're very set on what they want to do. And one of the things that I always advise them on is be open, because you might go in thinking, I want to be audio. But as you're working and you're working with the team and you're developing your skills, you might end up in the LED department with the screens, or you might end up in the camera area. It's just being open and not set up on so much, this is what I'm going to do, and be just very open to so many different things that can be thrown at you that you might actually enjoy more.
Especially true early in your career.
Yes,
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
much so.
Yeah. And Ron, what sort of obstacles did you find as you started to get into this crazy business?
As I started to get into it, well, I mean, personally for me, really not knowing the industry was, I guess it was a challenge. I mean, I guess the only advice I would have is just, like everybody else is saying, just be open. And yeah, I think the biggest obstacle I had was myself and not believing in myself, and and that held me back a little bit. And as I got farther into the business, I learned not to do that as much. That's all I could say.
We certainly conquered that, because
Yeah.
I never see that in you.
Well,
Anything holding you back. Jerry?
Well, for myself, it was to be taken seriously. We hear all the Me Too movement, we hear all of this stuff as a female, but I was really, really young in New York as an arranger. I'd been arranging already for like 5 years. And I went to Juilliard, and I normally don't even tell people my industry that, because they go, well, what are you doing, like, mixing NFL? And I'm like, well, I'm making a living. But Juilliard was the name itself jump-started me as an independent arranger in a really hot market of New York City in the recording studios. So I would go in with the artists, and I'd go in while we were tracking, and I would have all the charts laid out, and everyone treated me like I was the artist's girlfriend, and I'm sitting there, and I'm actually, until they actually saw me back in the day, you come from music, back in the day when you had to actually change the chart by hand on the fly, it was only until people saw me do things that actually required skill sets that they would actually answer my questions or take me seriously, so that was a challenge. And each time I would make a step into something new, even though I might have been recommended into it, it would be to be taken seriously. So in my case, I had to be on my game. I had to know what I was talking about. I had to be honest when I didn't know something, and hope that somebody would be generous enough to help lead the way. And most of the times, I would get that. But in my case, it was to be taken seriously. In the early days, for sure. Now they just call me because they want something done. But, it was tough back then.
But conquering it was with your skill set. It's showing your
Yeah,
skill set.
I had to show that I knew what I was talking about if I wanted to change that mix to reflect the arrangement. Yeah, so that was very early.
Right.
Yeah.
And Kylie?
Yeah, mine kind of goes in line with Jerry's. I graduated in 2009, which is 10 years ago, which seems crazy. It's a lot of time, but also not a lot of time. And my biggest issue was being undervalued, especially not getting any kind of meaningful work outside of Indiana. The first 5 years of my career, I wasn't paid more than $15 an hour. And I had a college degree and $30,000 in student loan debt to start paying back, which I couldn't start paying back until kind of recently. And so that was really hard. You want to be open and you want to do all of this career mapping, but you also, it's hard to really be in that mindset all the time when you're choosing between paying your electric bill and paying your rent on time. And I was one of the lucky ones, because my parents, if I really needed it, they could usually help me. But the survival aspect of graduating into a recession and being very young, being in a field that people undervalue, it became very democratized in 2009, which is really great and accessible, but it became very commoditized too. So I was seen in a way as replaceable. So I really, really had to believe in myself and make a lot of good decisions. And the thing that was most important to getting past that hurdle was finding people that I could work for that were really good people, and finding mentors that could keep me going when I was hitting my exhaustion point. And I know there are people that are in early career here where you're trying to do that in LA, which you think would be easier, but it's kind of not. It's just at a bigger scale. And there are people that have been here longer that are here for you and want you to stay, and they know how hard it is. And I'd say find people that have been through it more recently than not, because they'll have the best advice for you.
It's believing in yourself. And earlier in your career, we've all went through that period of time where you're wondering how you're going to pay your bills because the jobs are maybe infrequent, a lot of gaps, and it's tough. It's I certainly went through that too. A lot of depression at home, wondering what in the world am I going to do. But somehow you believe in yourself and you keep moving forward, which brings about the next question. We spend a lot of time learning our craft, doing what we can to learn that craft and have that skill set to stand out. But then how do we move forward with that? So how do we network? And the difference between networking and relationship building, which are two separate things. You got to do that networking first, and then you start developing that relationship building. How did you go about getting your name out there?
Like I said, I use social media, and in the presentation there's a good tip about asking people about themselves too. Like, it's a two-way thing, it's a relationship. Networking would be if I went up to somebody and I said, "Hi, I'm Kylie, I'm really interested in media tech and I'm looking for a job." But a relationship is me going up to them and saying, "Hi, I'm Kylie, I work at Netflix, I'm really interested in media and entertainment, I worked on this and this project recently, I'm really proud of it and interested in all these opportunities. What have you worked on recently that you're proud of?" There's a difference between those, treating people like they're things to collect that you can use later versus people that you can rely upon in your peer group to answer questions when things get hard. Not even, you don't think of people as just, these are people that are going to give me jobs. They're people that are going to refer you and then refer you, or be the people that you call at midnight on a Tuesday when something's really broken and you can't Google it because it's too new, and you can only rely on your peer expert group. So just keep that in mind when you're meeting people. They are people first.
Yes.
They're not objects.
Right.
You have also your colleagues, by the way, who are also looking for work,
Yeah.
aren't necessarily competition. They're also your best contacts.
Yes.
When I was starting out, all the people I'd gone to school with and these different people I'd met in the first companies where I worked, when we moved on to different jobs, we're all looking out for each other. And that's an important relationship to build upon. It's a huge relationship to build upon. Also, it lets you know you're not alone. So, anyways, Jerry?
Well, in my situation, I like I mentioned before, I didn't really network. It would be like I would get recommended for something, and then I'd be in that, which was post-production, and then from post-production, it just happened to be a house that did live NASCAR, so it was the show Race Day, and they come running in and go, "Will you mix Race Day this weekend? We don't have anybody," and I'm like, "Well, I don't do live." So one thing led to another for me. So I didn't network in the normal way that people would normally network. I just kind of fell into things. But since I actually think, and particularly being on the mentor side, and I am a mentor, I'm a really strong proponent of helping the next person make it a little easier than it was for me. But to me, networking is, you're going to go to events like this SMPTE event. You're going to go where the people that you admire and you want to be like, where they go, where do they speak, what events do they go to. So for me, it would be SMPTE, it would be AES, it would be NAB, it would be NAM, anybody that's involved that you can actually go up and meet, shake their hand, get more information. How did you get into the business? What kind of obstacles, like you're saying, did you run into? So to me, that's the networking side. The relationship side to me is something that I think is actually very personal. It's like once you have contact with somebody, you stay in contact with that person. You do in fact make it about them. You know, what is it that they're struggling with? And you just try to maintain contact with these people. And before you know it, just like she mentioned earlier, like you end up having relationships or friendships that are way beyond the industry because you maintain proper contact with those people. And it may or may not be the right avenue for you, but if you don't maintain the contact with these people and maintain those relationships, you're not going to know. So show up at events like this, ask a lot of questions, get the card, stay in contact.
I know in post-production, one of the things it's always talked about is how it's very difficult having relationships when you're in post-production because you're working crazy hours. Obviously, on the type of broadcast you're doing, you're traveling a lot.
Right.
I certainly was always told is why in the world do I want to go into entertainment? It's high risk of having a full career, and why in the world? And when people ask me how to get started, I always say bad childhood. It seems to make sense. But what's not being spoken of here is the reason why we all do it and why we take that risk is you fall in love with this industry, and it's that passion. And it's that passion that drives you, and that's an important part also. Everybody here is passionate about what they do. And for you, those of you moving your career forward, hopefully you found that in yourself, because that's really what you need. That and a good sense of humor, by the way. But passion is really important. How about you, Ron?
Well, my perception of networking relationships in this industry is that it's very personal and it's very word of mouth. I think Bernard will attest to this. I mean, the way it works in our industry is hey, I'm looking for a sound editor, and so and we need this person, and so I'll go to Bernard. Hey, Bernard, I'm looking for a effects editor. Who do you know? He knows, he's met this guy. Hey, this guy's just coming up. Let's try him. But I've never gone on to the MPSC work list and look for an editor and say, oh, well, let's try this guy. It never works that way. It's always, I'm looking for somebody. I'm looking for this very personal thing. So, try to do if you get an opportunity, do the best job you can, and build that relationship with that person, and stay in contact, and that's kind of how it works in my little world, or I guess I would say our little world, because Bernard and I kind of do the same thing. So, and I don't know if I even have a difference between networking and relationship building. I don't know if there's a difference to me.
How about your perspective of all this, and how you see people moving around and trying to position themselves for jobs?
Yes, just like he mentioned, it's a lot about who they know. In our shows, we usually work with more than one business, and it's amazing how, oh, this guy worked at E3, he worked at the auto show, he's a great guy, we need to bring him in. Believe it or not, they're all talking amongst themselves, and the people that are in charge are talking amongst themselves, and they see the talent, and they remember it. And when they're needing a camera guy, when they're needing an audio guy, when they're needing somebody in any role, they start remembering the shows and what your work was, what you did, and that's how the relationship starts building. Oh, this guy is great. He's been in this show, that show, this show. He's very reliable. He's always on time. There's been no issues with his work. So it's amazing how your talent is being basically looked at and judged, and your skills are sought out later once you develop those relationships.
So I see the clock running down here. I want to give time for questions. So real quick, in just like a nutshell, each of you give what words of advice would you give for people early in their career trying to move forward? Kylie, do you want to start?
Sure. I would say the biggest thing I learned is don't get caught up in the person you thought you'd be when you were younger. Children and young adults and students have a very basic understanding of the industry because you have to start somewhere. I wanted to be a movie and TV editor from a really young age. I was 13 or 14. And that made it difficult when I was in my mid to late 20s, and I had the opportunity to pivot into something that was more appropriate. And thankfully I had a mentor that was willing to argue with me a lot and talk me through making this pivot and letting go of this lofty dream that wasn't really suited for me anymore. So be prepared to make changes and understand that this industry changes so much that, I mean, I work at Netflix. When I graduated just 10 years ago, it was still primarily DVDs. My team didn't exist. The stuff we're doing didn't exist. You have to be ready to embrace change and be okay with that.
I also agree with Kylie. I believe learn everything you can, get on top of your skill sets, become an expert in not just your field, but in all of the impending fields that are coming. We started in analog, And when we had this discussion, there was a big pushback from analog to digital, and there was a lot of people didn't want to do digital. Pay attention to trends, get on top of the trends, go to Dante training, go to audio training, get your hands on those boards, get your hands on everything that you can learn, pay attention, be willing to do whatever it takes, and diversify a little bit. You know, I do RF technologies as well as I mix, just so I can stay employed and show up early, be easy to work with, do whatever it takes that's asked of you, as long as it's not abusive, and enjoy yourself, because there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yeah, I'd say ditto. It's you know, get in there. Even if it's an unpaid thing, try to you know, get in with people that you want to work with, that are doing the things you want to do, and you know, just try to watch over their shoulder. I do the same thing. I'll encourage people new to the industry to come and hang out. You know, just watch what we do, and you know, and then I'll throw them a bone. Hey, do you want to cut a real dialogue? Do you want to cut some effects? And I can, you know, and they show it, and I encourage that to do for everybody. You know, different supervisors go and ask this guy, hey, can I do something for you? Can I just show you what I can do? Hang out, and you know, you'll get your chance, and just be flexible.
Same as he's saying, be flexible. A lot of the technicians in our field, the best ones have started in the warehouse, the lowest position you can imagine, and they've worked their way up. They understand everything from the start to end, and they were able to develop their skills, understand how the gear works. So it's this trust that gets developed between the team, that they know exactly how it is that everything's working. So it's just being open to learning everything you can, and as you're learning, you start developing what your skills are. Don't go in thinking, I'm going to be an audio guy. Be open to it, because you might end up in camera, or you might end up in, you know, some other field, as learning everything you can about the industry.
Now let's open up some questions. I see there's a microphone right here, but you can project your voice too, either way.
Thank you so much. What a great panel. Really appreciate it. I have a very specific question relating to me, but maybe it can be useful in terms of just the very discussion we had about pivoting. I spent 3 or 4 years in Europe producing behind-the-scenes documentaries on movies. I worked on about a dozen movies all over Europe, and I really loved it. I enjoyed owning the entire creative process from beginning to end, interviewing the actors, creating these journalistic BTS documentaries. But DVDs, as we all know, have now changed, and people who create that content have had to do other things. I know I've had to pivot and be open and do other things. I'm just curious to know if any of the panel know of people in this world and what they have gone on to do. I know Netflix has got some great kind of BTS content on Stranger Things and similar shows like that, but what are all the BTS people doing that you know of? What have they pivoted into, or what thoughts do you have in terms of applying that skill set in a pivot? Thank you.
I could only hear like a little bit of what you said, but I think I understood what you're asking, how to apply that skill set to a BTS type environment. At least with Netflix, I know that there are some in-house producers that work on those kinds of things, and it's a matter of finding the right role and figuring out how to sell yourself for it, just like everything else. So looking over your resume and cover letter and really honing in on the things that suit the job. But a lot of studios, not just Netflix, also send that content to third-party facilities. So there are so many of them that do EPK, BTS type stuff, and they're run by people with those kinds of skill sets. So really it's a matter of expanding your network for those people. So I would say trying to go out into places where they hang out, where they do meetups, and meeting them. The people that I know that have worked on those things got those gigs through relationships, the long path, the hard way. And even when I was still editing, my last gig when I was an editor was a Disney EPK, which I got from a friend I knew from Twitter.
Any other questions? Well,
as you can probably tell, I'm from the UK, and perhaps some observations, perhaps Angela, working with an international company like NEP, about things in different countries. We've heard about working in Europe, things on that line. Another point on the emphasis on teamwork and how working in teams is different. Television is a working team media, radio is wander out there with a mic. Comments?
I have a few comments. You probably do too. Working for a broadcast company or a network, in my case, I might work on NEP, but I might be contracted to Fox Sports or CBS Sports or whatever. Probably one of the biggest challenges in going overseas is that you can't always take the trucks. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And in this case would be adapting to the kind of gear that they have over there. One of the biggest obstacles that you're going to run into internationally on a broadcast is that, and also for people who travel for concert sound, is that your RF technology and that you use here in the frequency bands that we readily use, which is now shrinking to about this, doesn't always work in other countries. And they're different licensing in other countries, so they'll ship their gear because that's shippable and it won't work. So it's doing some due diligence on the front end before you go into those other countries. The other part is that NEP may have companies over there overseas that are actually already equipped with some of our broadcast technologies inside of the truck. I know CalRec is both UK and here. We see a lot of CalRecs in our trucks. And some Studers, which is also in other countries. So sometimes you just have to advance it. And there's so many fabulous tech managers that work for companies like NEP and the broadcast that I work on, that they have advanced these so many times that it's fairly seamless. The RF will maybe trip you up a little bit. There might be some of the other gear, but for the most part, at least on my working end of it, that's what we've run into.
Yes, and NEP, we have many businesses in the UK. So if we have any necessity to work with each other, we usually fly our US people to the UK. They do the work there, they use the gear there, and then we fly them back. Mm-hmm. So we don't usually ship equipment. Right.
in relation to what you mentioned about teamwork, I mean, for Ron and I,
Yes, we
Yes.
do. Yes.
The people go.
Yes, the people go.
They want the shows to be consistent. So when you see an NFL show that's actually coming from the UK, it was our Fox crew this last time. Sometimes it's the CBS crew. It was Jeff Cohen and Mark Butler and that whole crew went over there this year. And each year it depends on whether it's the ABC crew, and you can stop me afterwards and I can break that down as to what that means. But it's more based on national broadcast than more regional, and then it breaks down from there. But they'll ship that entire crew that did the Sunday show last week here, and they'll be doing it out of the UK, and it'll be the same crew. And then they'll come back and do their next NFL game here.
Same.
I was going to add is that you can see that Ron and I is on the creative side of post-production sound. And when we go out, we're relying on the engineers, we're relying on that collaboration and that teamwork to make this all happen. Yeah. And it always is on all levels. It's a collaboration. On the technical side, on the creative side, it's always a collaboration, especially as we become more and more global in our relationships overseas and out of the country also. Mm-hmm. So do we have time for one last question? I know there was one left. This gentleman here had one last question, and we'll have to wrap it up after that.
Thank you for all the speakers that today have learned a lot of information. And I'm a colorist and also finishing artist, and today I can be here because I want to shout out the Blue Collar Post Collective. It's a post group support me to be here to learning. And I just have a curious question because for me, it's like I'm just started my parenthood, and also I've been like working in the DI like post house for a couple years, but for me it's like because because I just started a family, but I also get like very low rate, something like that at very beginning. Just wondering, do all the speakers have ever like lost the passion and almost decided to do this another route, but something that gets you back, like something like decided, okay, I need to keep how you keep yourself like still doing things that you love, but yeah, when you have a difficulty, no matter it's a family or a financial issue, that
Yeah, at my last job, I was so burned out. I was looking for anything in the meantime. I was working day and night and feeling really low about it. I was physically and mentally burned out. I had physical symptoms. My personality changed. I knew I was wrong. So the thing I needed the most was time away. And I realized I was also putting too much of my identity in the work. I needed stuff to do that had nothing to do with Hollywood too. And I think that's really important to try to develop early as a habit, getting out of it. And it's hard because you have to hustle so hard when you're young. I was doing gigs constantly, my day job and then at night, but trying to get away here and there and find something else. So when you do have a low at work, it doesn't impact every part of you. That was really important to me. And the way I got out of it was finding a team that actually, they valued me and they valued that balance. It was very lucky, but it was also positioning myself in the right opportunity and the ability to take advantage of that. So, yeah, get a hobby.
This is really important. This is something that comes up oftentimes in questions. You have to have that balance. You have to have your personal life. This business can definitely overwhelm you and encompass everything, and you burn out if you allow that to happen. You got to have that balance.
You definitely burn out. There have been times, you know, in the position that I'm in, that Angela also sees too, is that we have a high amount of stress in a short period of time. And when things go badly, they go very badly. And it goes badly for everybody in the truck, especially the A1 mixer. You know, everyone here has watched a Grammys or has watched a Super Bowl or has, you know, when they lost the power and they only had the mics on the field. You know, we at home don't know what's going on, but there is absolutely mayhem going on in the truck, and they're screaming and yelling, and you're sitting there, and sometimes maybe your board dies and it's not even your fault, and you sit there and you go, you know what, there's no amount of money in the world that's worth this stress. I'm done. I'm not ever doing this again. You know, everyone's looking at you, and then you realize that every single person that sat in that chair has been through the exact same thing several times over. They've all said the same thing. They walk away flaming, and then they're going, I'm never doing this again. And then you take a few days and you go, oh, but when it's great, it's really great. You know, and there's nothing like it to pull off a live show. However, I will say that on these big shows, what I do, I just came back from AES and a bunch of people were doing this too. I will take 2 or 3 days on the back end of a really major event. I'll go to a spa, I'll check out, I'll tell my family this is where I am, I turn my phone off, and I get pampered, and I shut it all down. And I think it's really important when you're in a high stress job to take some of this quality time for yourself. These services are out there for a reason, and I'm all about using them. Decompress and be good to yourself and know, you know what, it's just a gig, the next one will be better.
Anything you guys want to quickly add? Because we're pretty much out of time.
Oh, I just ditto that. That's great advice. You got to shut down.
Yep.
Just have to shut down and get away, and definitely have a hobby, something you like to do, that's something that can take you completely away from this industry, because it can just consume you.
Same, I always tell my technicians after they've had a very stressful gig, I need you guys to take some time off.
Yes.
Because you're going to burn out. oh no, but I'm scheduled next week. No, let's pull you out. You need some time for yourself, because then they start resenting the job. They start getting upset.
Yes.
They start wanting to go somewhere else because they're overwhelmed. So that time off to just reflect and be on your own and do something that you enjoy is really important.
Yes.
Thank you. On behalf of EIPMA and SMPTE, I want to thank this great discussion and our panelists.